To welcome everyone. My name is Rabbi Emily Laz Ben Ostrov. I am honored and blessed to be the rabbi at Temple of Israel in Wilmington, North Carolina. As I look out at many of your faces, I see some of you are my congregants from Temple of Israel. Some of you are congregants around the corner at our conservative congregation in town, as well as I see some friends from Alabama, welcome, and friends from Florida, and friends from Georgia. Those are the sponsoring organizations, and I'm really very grateful. And some of you may have heard about tonight from a different way, so please feel free as we're beginning to put your name in the chat, and you can also put where you're from. I'm going to go ahead and make sure everybody, though, is muted. And so there we go. Feel free, though, to write in the chat your name and where you're from. We're very happy that you are with us. And we are about to have a true musical treat. Before we get into our wonderful presentation tonight on Ladino, a cultural memory with Rivka, I'm going to invite us all to join in two prayers together. Those of you who know me know that one will definitely be the Shehechianu, because I want to take advantage of every moment to say a Shehechianu. And we'll also say the blessing for Torah study. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Really happy to see everybody writing in your hellos and where you're coming from. Just a moment, I'll be able to, you'll see the blessings. Here we go. And of course, it is simply a blessing to be together with everyone this evening. So if you would like to unmute, you can repeat after me. It's the easiest way, or the only way really to get it. Put it back. I'm going to invite you to repeat after me. Baruch atah Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai.
Eloheinu melech haolam.
Eloheinu melech haolam.
Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav.
Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav.
V'tzivanu la'asok.
V'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Divrei Torah. Amen.
Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to engage with words of Torah. And we will definitely have a sense of Torah as we learn together tonight. Let us all say amen.
Amen. Amen.
And the second blessing is to offer a Shehechianu, and it is a Shehechianu moment that we are all together, some of us meeting each other for the first time, but also a true Shehechianu moment, I know for me, and I'm sure for many of you, as we get this opportunity to delve into Ladino. For some of us, we may have a connection to Ladino. For others, this could be really the first true experience to really embrace this beautiful language that is ours as well. So please repeat after me. Baruch atah Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai.
Eloheinu melech haolam.
Eloheinu melech haolam.
Shehechianu.
Shehechianu.
V'kiyamanu.
V'kiyamanu.
V'higianu.
V'higianu.
Lazman hazeh.
Lazman hazeh.
Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, who has kept us alive, sustained us, and brought us to this wonderful time as we join together in celebration of being together, celebration of Ladino, and simply of being together as a Jewish community. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share. Feel free to say amen to that prayer. And now that you've all had a chance to say amen, I'm going to go ahead and ask everyone to mute yourselves if you don't mind. And we are going to start momentarily. Again, thank you to everyone who is helping to sponsor this evening. I want to thank Rabbi Bender, who is here with us from Congregation B'nai Israel and sponsoring with us also in Wilmington, North Carolina. Thank my friend Virginia Brissett, who is here with us from Gainesville, Florida. And I don't want to say the Federation wrong, or Virginia, say it so I don't say it wrong.
It's the Jewish Council of North Central Florida.
I knew I was going to say it wrong. So thank you for saying that. And I know we have our Birmingham, Alabama congregation representatives here with us, as well as members potentially from the Thomaso family in Augusta, Georgia. So it is great to have so many people. Again, feel free to say hello in the chat. And I am about to turn this over to my new dear friend, Rivka Amado. Rivka is coming to us tonight from the West Coast, and we are so grateful that she is here with us to really introduce us to something very personal to her, really a part of who she is. So I don't want to give that away because Rivka is going to share in more detail for us, but I'll just say that Rivka Amado is a PhD, having earned her PhD in Applied Ethics at the University of Toronto. She's taught at Stanford and Princeton. We're going to learn all about her journey. She is a lecturer, a musician, a yoga teacher who specializes in Judeo-Spanish music, culture, and history, focusing on Sephardic women's songs and spiritual expression. We are so honored that you are with us tonight, Rivka. This is the first of 3 sessions where I know we're going to expand our minds and our horizons. Please feel free to put any questions in the chat, either to everyone or directly to me. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and spotlight Rivka, who you can also call Riva, as a wonderful name. Only her friends get to call her Riva, but I think we're all her friends now. So we can go ahead and do that. Rivka, thank you so much, and take it away.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Emily Losben. Thank you so much. I feel I'm so excited that I am engaging in this beautiful opportunity to share with you my knowledge and my story of the Ladino language, Ladino music, Ladino culture. And I really want to express my true appreciation, Emily, first of all, for the invitation, and also for, for all the sponsoring organizations that help to facilitate this workshop. So before we start, and I'm going to use my PowerPoint. Let me tell you a little bit about my personal journey. Actually, when I was born in Israel, and I was born to a Ladino-speaking family. My mother was born in Istanbul, and my father was born in Burgas, Bulgaria. My paternal grandmother, she's from Sarajevo, Yugoslavia, and my maternal grandmother, she was originally from Saloniko, but she grew up in Istanbul. So my whole family came actually from the Balkan. And so this is actually the culture and the language that I grew up with. However, I was not, even though I was, growing up with this culture and this language, and my grandmother used to sing Ladino songs to me, and especially lullaby songs. Nevertheless, it was not part of my life. It was hidden inside of me, but I didn't do anything with this. And then when I moved to California, actually when we moved to Berkeley, I would say 17 years ago. Then until then, I was a professor at the Bar Ilan University. I was teaching mostly medical ethics and political ethics. And so when I moved here, I continued teaching in different universities, but I wanted to take sort of like a deep break from the academic life and start to dig down and search for my roots as a Sephardic woman. And so eventually this beautiful journey led me to develop some programs in Ladino, which what I do, I lecture about it, I perform, I sing, I also compose songs, and I write even, I wrote some songs in Ladino. So I was gradually developing, some new enterprise, which it's strongly related to my roots. And I must tell, it was really a fascinating journey. And what I would like to do today, and in the next two sessions, I would like to share with you some of my insights, some of the stories, some of the music that I sing, and hopefully you can enjoy it as much as I enjoyed it. So let me start with I want the PowerPoint here. And I need to share, just a second, I need to share the screen, yes?
Yes, just click share screen at the bottom. You should be good.
Yeah, and then, okay.
You know what? Cancel out. You're going to want to redo. Oh, there you can do it from the bottom if you want.
Yeah. This one?
Yep. Just want to make sure that we get that. There we go. Okay.
Do you see it?
We do. You might want to click at the top, the present, the
Where?
at the bottom, so that we're not. It's up to you if you want us to see the slides on the left or just the one that you're showing.
No, it's all. I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm getting here. So yeah, we leave it like this.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so again, welcome to this class, a workshop on cultural memory and Ladino language and music. And we are going to have 3 sessions. And the first one, which is today, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you some sort of like brief historical account of who are the Sephardim and their origin. And also we're going to talk about the evolution of the language, which is the Ladino language. In the second meeting, which is going to be next week, we are going to explore more widely the Ladino repertoire. And like today, we are going to talk more, and the next week, we're going to sing more. And the Ladino repertoire involve 4 major, I would say, categories of music: the ballads, the narrative poems, the canticas, which is the lyrical poems. And then we continue in the third meeting, we're going to talk about the coplas and the liturgical song. And at the end, we will bring some insights, observations about where Ladino culture is going to, so what's the future actually of the Ladino music, the Ladino language, and the entire culture. All right, so let's start with the Sephardim. Okay, so the Sephardim were the Jews, or the descendant of the Jews who lived in Spain and in Portugal for almost 2 millennia. And some of the Sephardim, they arrived after the destruction of the first temple in 586 BCE. And over time, still others arrived, but they came as traders and slaves of the Romans after the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE. And by the Middle Ages, there was really a thriving and well-integrated community. And this is the period between 900 and 1200 CE. And this is the period which it's called the Golden Age era. And it was golden for Jews because Jews, Christian and Muslim managed to live in harmony, and they were very prosperous, and they contributed a lot to the prosperity of the entire Iberian Peninsula. And the great Jewish philosopher and the doctor Maimonides, Rambam, he was born and also grew up in Cordova, and he's one of the most famous figures at that time. And also we can recognize others, a poet, for example, like Judah el-Kharizi, Yehuda Levi, Shlomo Ibn Gvirol. And what I want to say is that Jews really managed to thrive in many areas, not only in medicine and poetry, but also in science, in astronomy, in cartography, in almost every walk of life. And here I want to say, sort of like a disclaimer, that some claim that the Golden Age, even though it's called the Golden Age era, it was not so golden for the Jews, because over all the time the Jews lived in Spain, they were subjected to some pogroms and violence. So it was, like ups and downs. It was not all the time, but even during the Golden Age era, which the Jews really, it was a successful time for the Jews, nevertheless, there were some incidents of violence toward them. So this idol came to an end in the late 15th century, where when the Christians, they took control of the entire region of Spain, and they subjected both the Muslim and the Jews to horrendous treatment. And on 1492, the Jews and the Muslim were expelled from Spain, and following the edict that the king of Spain, the king and the queen, we have to remember the Queen Isabella, actually, she was quite dominant in this, they commanded the Jews to either convert to Christianity or to depart, leaving their wealth behind. Many remained behind and converted to Christianity or pretended to convert. Even though the Inquisition drove many of them eventually to depart, and because even those who converted, the Inquisition really suspected their sincerity, and they treated them like they were not very reliable, and actually they were following them all the time. So the question is, after the expulsion, they were confronted with these three questions. First of all, where they can go. Secondly, what country would be most secure for the Jews? And should they go to a place with a culture that resembled their own culture? Because, it's a matter of learning a new language, learning a new custom, etc. And one that, maybe that already there is some existing Jewish community. So the Sephardim departed for two, I would say, major destinations. One route was to the world of the Islam, from Morocco and Egypt to Palestine, and then to the Balkan. And the second route went to Portugal, which is actually the vast majority, and then they go to the Netherlands, Italy, the Dutch colonies, and the New World, Brazil, Curacao, Mexico, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and Texas. So here I have a map, which is, it's not very clear, but you can see the arrows of the places, and the red dots are the new communities the Sephardic communities, and you could see mostly it was in the Ottoman countries, which we see here in Istanbul, like Turkey, Bursa, Izmir, and Salonika, Greece, Belgrade, Yugoslavia, and then we have here in Italy also. Some went to, and this part I'm going to talk about it later, but it's mostly, if you can see here, they went to Tangier, which is Morocco, North Africa, then they went to Tunis, Algeria, Egypt, Alexandria, there was a big community, then Palestine. Palestine was not very attractive because it was a poor Jewish community, and they really didn't want to go. And the one who went to Israel, they went mostly to Tzfat because Tzfat was a Kabbalistic center, and the one who believed in messianic ideas found this place attractive. So the one day, as I said, so when they had to leave, the closest place to go was Portugal. And they lived peacefully for 5 years there. And then after 5 years, the daughter of Isabella, the Queen of Spain, she was engaged to the King Emanu-El of Portugal. And Isabella was conditioned the marriage only if Emanu-El, the king, is going to convert all the Jews that are in Portugal. So what he did, he issued an edict as well. It was 1497, and as the Jews started walking out of Spain, out of Portugal, then the king realized it's going to be an economic disaster. So he decided to stop it. And how do you stop it? He commanded that all children, Jewish children between the age of 4 to 14, will be forcefully baptized. So by 1520, tens of thousands of converts were trapped in Portugal, and they were unable to leave the country. And by the way, I don't know if you heard about Donna Gracia and the Sea, which that can be another lecture about, this wonderful early feminist philanthropist. She established an underground organization that helped to smuggled the converts out of Portugal to safe and secure communities in Italy and also in Turkey. So, and some of the Jews who remain in Portugal, they kept their faith in secretly, and they become what we call the crypto Jews or the Marrano Jews. Now, since life was really unbearable even for the conversos, so they were trying to escape, and so they went to Amsterdam, to the Dutch colonies, also eventually, and to the New World, and as I here you can see in the slide that some even believe that Columbus took with him a lot of the Marranos, a lot of the conversos, because they had a lot of knowledge in map crafting and navigation. So these Marranos actually established the communities in the New World, and today in Brazil, like the estimate is that you have like 10 million Marranos that have in their DNA have some Jewish ancestry. So, this is the story of Portugal, and here is a map that it can tell you. Here are the arrows can tell you where the Jews went from to Portugal. So they went to Latin America, Brazil, Chile, Ecuador, Mexico, and United States. Okay, so. So when the expulsion took place, and when the Jews left the Iberian Peninsula, each group of Jews that, because they came from different regions, they spoke a different dialect. But before we go into the Ladino language and the evolution of the language, there is a legend there that about the Jews, that despite the traumatic dislocation, they continue to treasure their identity, Spanish identity. And for them, the homeland, it was not like Israel, it was not like Palestine. The homeland for the Sephardim was always Spain, despite all the torture and the humiliation that they went through. And language and music, of course, is one of the tools that you use in order to preserve memories, preserve your nostalgic, feelings. And what I want to do now, I want to share with you a song that it's a legendary song, and it was written by a late Florida Gota singer, and maybe some of you heard about her. She's a Bosnian singer. She was a Bosnian singer. She wrote a lot of Ladino songs, and she also is responsible for the revival of the Ladino culture and music, especially here in North America. And she wrote this song, which is called "The Key from Spain," which describe the Sephardic yearning and hopes and fantasies to go back to their homes and open their gate with their key. And so here's the song. It's called La Llave de España.
Rivka, as you're getting ready, I'm going to stop your sharing just so we can see you more clearly when you're doing this, and then we can reshare afterwards, if that's okay.
You want me to do it? I can do it.
Sure. I just want us to be able to see you better too.
Yeah, sure. Stop sharing.
Great.
Good. Okay. ¿Dónde está la llave que estaba en cajón? ¿Dónde está la llave que estaba en cajón? Mi nonas la trujeron con gran dolor de su casa de España, de España. De su casa de España, de España. Sueño de España, sueño de España. ¿Dónde está la llave que estaba en cajón? Mi nonas la trujeron con grande amor. Dijeron a los fillos, esto es el corazón de nuestra casa, de España, de España, de nuestra casa, de España, de España. Sueño España, sueño España. ¿Dónde está la llave que estaba en cajón? Mi nonas la trujeron con grande amor. Dijeron a los fillos, los nietos, a meterla el cajón de nuestra casa de España, de España. Sueño de España, sueño de España. beyond. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the sharing. Okay, do you see?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, let me find out what's going on. What about now? You see?
It's good. If you want to just take your cursor down to the bottom. Yeah. Okay, great.
Okay, now. Okay, good. All right. So here, actually, I should have shown you earlier about the translation of the song, but I will be happy to send it later. Okay, so the Ladino emerged after the expulsion. So, sometimes we have it's sort of like, I would say, misconception that the Ladino was born in Spain, but it's not. Actually, it was born after the expulsion. And it's really because when Jews lived in Spain, they spoke the collegial, language that all Spaniard people were speaking. So there was nothing special about, the language of the Jews. But after the expulsion, they sort of like gradually created their own language, which we called Judo-Espanol or a Ladino, which is a mixture of Old Castilian dialect and Hebrew, mostly biblical Hebrew. Now, as they resettle in the new communities, mostly the Balkan, then they gradually absorbed new words from the new communities. And so you can identify in the Ladino language, you can identify some words that are Turkish, some Greek words, some Italian words, some French word also. So overall, the language, which is sort of like a natural process, evolved. And when we talk about Ladino, the core is the Castilian dialect, but the overall, if we talk about overall vocabulary, is a mixture. So now, so one might ask why the Castilian dialect and not other dialects, because when the Jews, the Sephardim came, they came from different regions in Spain, not necessarily the Castilian. So you have the dialect which we call the Old Aragonese from Aragon, then you have the Castile, then you have the Old Catalan. Catalan is mostly, the Valencia and Barcelona, and the Old Portuguese dialect. So once they arrived in the Ottoman Empire, obviously there was no unified linguistic traditions. Because they came from different cities in Spain, and despite the differences in the dialect, the old Castilian Spanish took dominance over the other dialects due to two main reasons, which I put it. First of all, the royal family declared in Spain that the Castilian Spanish is going to be the official dialect. And even though Jews were already resettled themselves in the, in the new communities, they still kept some commercial and business communication with Spain. There was some, interchanges through traveling and other, business endeavor. So so they wanted to communicate in the Castilian, the established Castilian dialect. And the other reason is that at the time that the printing machine started working, mostly in the two major Jewish centers. One is in Salonika in Greece, and the other one is in Constantinople, which is Istanbul. So these printing houses, they managed to publish work that throughout and distribute it throughout the entire Sephardic world. So they publish it in Castilian. So this actually helped a lot to make sure that this is the dominant dialect. Okay, just before. So despite the dominance of the Castilian dialect, there were differences in the spoken Ladino among Sephardim who lived in Turkey and Rhodes, which they were very loyal to the Castilian dialect, and the Sephardim who lived in Greece, in Macedonia, in Sarajevo, in Bosnia, they were more loyal to the northern part of Spain and to Portugal. And I can tell you, in the song that I was just singing to you, there was one line, "Dijeron a los fillos." It means they were talking to the fillos. Fillos is hijos or hija or hijos, yeah, which is, this is in the Castilian, but in the Greek dialect, or the one that coming from, it's not the Greek, but the Jews who lived in Greek, they spoke, and also in Macedonia, in Florida Gotha actually was coming from Bosnia. So it's fijos, not ijos, fijos. So there was different for the same meaning of the word, there was different pronunciation. Okay, so this is not the end of the story, because the language continued to evolve independently of the normalization taking place in Spain at that time. And as I said before, new words adapted from the new communities, and words from Arabic and Turkish and French and Italian, Bulgarian, etc., etc. And the Ladino language register was spoken differently among different social groups. So the rabbinic group, they used mostly the Hebrew or the Aramaic expression. So this was one group. The other one was the upper class group, what we call Gvirim, Gvir. They are the wealthy gentlemen, businessmen, bankers, or political figures. They spoke also French and Italian, but the Hebrew component was not so dominant. Actually, they spoke less Hebrew, and they were more influenced by external, factors or external languages that they were exposed to while they were doing their business. Then they had the lower class, which we call the Benoniim, or Balabatim, the homeowners, and they kept in touch with the non-Jewish neighbors, the Gentile, and their speech was most receptive to Turkish and Balkan elements. And then we have the westernized class, which study alla franca in French style. In school, the instruction was in European languages. I can tell you that my mother, she went to Alliance, and in the Alliance they spoke, they were teaching in French, and she knew very little Turkish, almost nothing. She spoke only Ladino and French. Which is quite interesting because they were not really, the Jewish community were not so involved, at least in terms of the education for children, was not involved with the Turkish education system. And then you have the Sephardic women, which they had really little education. Most of them, they were illiterate. They didn't know how to write and read, as opposed to the Ashkenazi women at that time in Europe. They had much more education, and they knew how to read, especially Hebrew. And the women, because they were secluded in their own private domain, which is the house, it's domestic culture, and they were not exposed to the outside world. Their language was completely different, and they knew very well how to sing ballads. And they actually were the one who were responsible for preserving the ballads, and we're going to talk about it next week. So the language was really conservative, and there was some archaic character to this. Okay, now this is the story of the Balkan, which you call the Levant. But in North Africa, there was a different story. In North Africa, or in Morocco, there was a dialect which called Hakiata, which is a mixture of Spanish, Arabic, and Biblical Hebrew. And it's coming, from Arabic root, which the meaning is speech. And most, or I would say many of the linguistic features of the Hakiata, they have evolved under the influence of modern Spanish, mostly because Morocco was not isolated from Spain, as opposed to other, communities. And also the arrival in Morocco of soldiers, officials, and Spanish settlers in the middle of the 19th century also caused the re-Hispanization, as we say, of the Jews, which contributed to the destruction of this dialect. And unlike the Ladino, the Hakiata remained a colloquial form of communication and was not used as an educational tool, which eventually caused her extinction. Now, surprisingly, now with the revival of the Ladino, the Castilian Ladino in the last, I would say 10 years or 15 years, now suddenly the people who lived in, mostly Moroccan Jews who lived in Israel, they want to also to give some respect to their, cultural heritage, which involved the Hakiata, and so there is some, development also in this area. So I gave you some example here of the linguistic differences between Ladino and Hakiata. For example, Brit Milah, which is circumcision, they would call him circumcision, which is close to the, to the Latin word. And then Kala, or fiancé, it's called Novia. Or Rosh Hashanah, they call it Rosanna. Shabbat, they call it Saba or Sabad, or Taref, which is, the non-kosher or the impurity, they call it Trefa. Okay, so these are, just a few examples of the differences between the languages. Okay, so if I want to summarize and ask the main question is why Ladino language was preserved, and next week we are going to talk who is responsible for the preservation of the Ladino culture and language, not language, the Ladino music. But the big question is why Ladino language was preserved, why it remained so important. So the first answer is that it was a language of necessity in a community that was often unable to assimilate into its large host society. So it's quite obvious that if you want to keep the community intact and you want to keep the community cohesive as much as possible and to prevent, some fractures within the community, one way to do it is to use a language. So language is sort of like a glue that brings people together. It's sort of like a device that also generates some solidarity and mutual responsibility. The other reason is that it was a language of lost homeland. And the Sephardim had been there for more than 2,000 years, and their loss was manifested or expressed or reflected in their language, in the poetry, in songs and story. So one way to keep your tradition, and again, it's coming to the notion of what is a community, yeah. So one way to do it is keep language and keep the culture alive as much as possible. It's also an international language that allowed the Jews from different locations to communicate with each other. There was some trade through either navigation, like through sailing and other form of transportation. And especially the men, the Sephardic men, they travel from one community to another, and one way to communicate and to make sure that business is going well is to use the language of your own people. The other thing is that the Ladino also served for prayer and for Torah studying. And the Shulchan Aruch and Pirkei Avot and the Bible were translated into Ladino to ensure that they are available for the Jews in the language that they understand. This was really crucially important to keep the not only the tradition but also the religious practice intact. Okay, so what I want to do, so that's basically that's actually, I'm bringing to closure my first presentation, and I put some sources for additional information for people who wants to read more about Ladino, or if you want to listen to some musical clips that I have in YouTube. And what I would like to do now, I would like to open the discussion for questions and any comments that you want to add.
Well, thank you, Rivka. I'm looking to see any questions in the chat. One thing I do want to make sure is that we can't let you leave tonight without at least one more song for tonight.
Absolutely.
So be prepared for that. We're getting that. We do have a question. Actually, would you mind going back and sharing a little bit of the poem again that you read, you sang the beautiful.
Yeah, so the translation, let me bring it to the... Okay. So where is the key that was in the drawer? My grandparents took it with great pain from their house in Spain. Dreams of Spain. Where is the key that was in the drawer? My grandparents took it with loving care. They say to the children, this is the very heart, corazón, okay, it's the heart of our house in Spain. Where is the key that was in the drawer? My grandparents took it with loving care. They gave it to their grandchildren to put it in a drawer. Our key from Spain, from Spain. These are dreams of Spain.
In my program, the cemetery committee is over. I need to leave in.
In hearing this, Rivka, it's so amazing. I saw that Rena put in the chat the similarity in the Ladino developments and reasons for it seeming parallel to Yiddish for the European Jews. And as you went through this, there were a couple times, and I actually wanted to comment, and I was holding myself back because I didn't want to just compare it to my understanding of the Yiddish experience, but there are so many similarities. One of the things I found fascinating was learning that there's all these different versions of Ladino, the same way that there's different versions of Yiddish, which I didn't even really know so much about until my husband, some of you know, speaks Yiddish, and he'll speak to somebody in Yiddish and he'll say, oh, no, that's not the Yiddish that I know. And I'm thinking, wait, isn't it all the same? So, just realizing again, all these little differences, or not so little differences. But I also find, Rena, your comment really interesting because Rivka, you're talking about this longing for Spain and longing for that as another homeland. We don't hear as much of that in the Yiddish. I know it's there in some places, but there's at least a lot of the modern day, it's not so much a longing for the shtetl or anything. It's kind of, there is a romanticism about some of it, but also breaking from it. So I find it so fascinating. One of the questions that came in the chat is, were there words from other Spanish dialects like Catalan in Ladino?
I'm not aware of this. I want to add something which is quite crucial, and we're going to talk about it in our next session, which actually going to be mostly music and less talking. It's that most of the popular Ladino songs that we are familiar with and that we perform until this very day were born in the late 19th century, 20th century. Okay, so it's really the spoken language that already established, like the Ladino, that already established with the new additions from different communities. So I can tell you that I know one song in Hakiata, and the words are really different, and it took me a while to really understand it. And so the Hakiata is really, it's sharply, I would say, different than from the Castilian dialect. Yeah.
Rivka, we're gonna make sure that we send out the slides to everybody. Is that okay? Including all this with the information?
Yeah.
And then if you wanna stop the sharing for a moment, that way we can see if anyone has any comments or questions in the little bit of time we have left. And there were some great comments that did come into the chat, which I loved seeing. I hope you'll get a chance to see it, Rivka, about people's own personal connections. Some of us here have some connections, whether it's to Spanish or whether it's to being in Rhodes, the Alliance Française schools. Is there anybody, feel free to either put it in the chat, or if somebody wants to raise their hand or unmute and ask a question or share a comment, anybody?
I'm curious about something.
Okay,
Yeah.
Bethany?
Yeah, I noticed that you had on the map there, I'm just curious from my own personal family history, like my family are German Jews from Hamburg, and I noticed that there used to be this kind of rumor that my grandfather came from Spain or something, and then everybody kind of forgot about it. And then I noticed that you had Hamburg on there as one of the places where people were migrating to. So I was wondering if you could say any more about that, or if you knew any more about that.
Well, I don't know. I don't know the details of the community that was established in Hamburg, but I know that there was Marranos, which actually the conversos, or the crypto Jews. They moved to England. They moved to Hamburg. They moved to Amsterdam. Actually, in Amsterdam there is a big synagogue, and which is. Established by the conversos. So, and I think it's still very much alive, this synagogue today. And and I tell you also, there was in Poland, there was also a Sephardic community, and today, you know, with this DNA research, people can find out their roots, and they can find out, even though they were thinking that they are Ashkenazi because their parents or grandparents came from Poland or came from Russia, maybe they have, you know, this Sephardic DNA or Sephardic roots, and yeah, so.
Oh, thank you. And Moranos is the same as Conversos, or no?
Marranos. Yeah.
Marranos.
Yeah, it's not a very nice word, but
Oh, it's a pejorative word.
yeah, but usually
Okay.
we call them conversos or crypto
Okay.
Jews.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
Rivka, I know what it means, but I think we need to tell people what it means, because it's always good to know what not to say so we know what it means. Will you share what the translation of the word is, just so we know not to use it and why we shouldn't use it?
Yes, it means pig. That's the translation. Pig. Okay, so which is not very nice. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, this is how we have to learn and share. There's a great comment from Jack about his twins getting a Portuguese dual citizenship. Jack, do you want to say anything else about that, or?
Very interesting. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have both worked with a Portuguese lawyer who happens to have the same last name as my mother did, Cohen, and so I think they have gotten it. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
they're going to be my anchor babies.
Very nice. Yeah, that's a new trend right now that was actually initiated by the Spanish government to give citizenship to people who have an ancestry in Spain, and you know they have a list of names, and people can apply and get it. And then Portugal followed the Spanish effort, and in fact today it's even cheaper to get Portuguese citizenship compared to the Spanish. To get a Spanish citizenship is much more expensive and apparently more complicated. It's not so straightforward, and in Portugal it's much easier. Yeah.
I heard that the Spanish authorities recently had made it stricter. They kind of made it stricter.
Stricter.
Dual citizenship. So they went through Portugal.
Yeah.
I see that Loli has her hand up. Loli, if you want to ask your question.
Yes. Hi, Riva. I was born in Cuba, and my grandparents came from northern Spain and from the Canary Islands.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Yeah.
Names. I have of my 8 last names, you know, the main last names, 6 of them are listed as Jewish last names. And I'm currently studying with Rabbi Emily. I'm nervous to convert to Judaism because I have felt the call. And you mentioned, it's funny how you mentioned those that left, how they want to go back to Spain. Well, for me, it's like I left, but I want to go back to my my Jewish roots because I feel them, and I've been called, and it was so fantastic to hear you.
Wow.
The Asturia has a dialect, and that song you sang, most of it, the fijos, all those words are in there. So
Wow.
it's just touched me, it's thank you so much.
Wow.
But
Yeah, what a beautiful story. Yeah.
they went to Cuba from Spain, right? The Marranos or the
Yeah, they went. Yeah, I think that until today there is a small community, a Jewish community in Cuba, in Havana.
well, Jewish communities in Havana.
Yeah.
But I meant that with Columbus is what I meant, that they were, but I don't really know my history exactly, but it's inside of me, and it's,
Yeah, you feel the connection. You feel the connection. That's great, and good luck. The process that you're going through. It's
and
really-
just trying to see how the universe or the world goes around. My oldest daughter has married a Jewish young man, and they're Ashkenazi. Yeah, his mom is my good friend, and she's supporting me. And my youngest grandson was done a brisk at home for his circumcision. So it was really, really beautiful. Mhm.
Wow.
The world goes.
Thank you, Loli. I want to also make sure that Bethany saw the comment that Rabbi Bender put in the chat, similar to your story as well. And we have a question from Judy or comment. And unless anyone else has any other comments, we'll then turn it back to you, Rivka, after Judy, so that we can finish out tonight, but be keeping our appetite wet and ready for next week. So you have to give us a little bit of a taste. Now, I know the Yiddish word for a taste is a Vorspice. I need to learn the Ladino word so I can say that as well. So for a taste of what's to come. But Judy, ask your question or your comment, please.
Really, I just want to say thank you so very much. I married into a basically Ashkenazic family. I lived and studied in Spain. In fact, I finished up my undergraduate degree there. And I've had for 50 some odd years this theory that because Ray's grandmother immigrated to the United States from Algeria, that the most logical thing was, since they lost a lot of their last names over the years, and I never could point to it other than today, you prove my theory pretty darn solid that Ray's grandmama and family moved from Spain to someplace. They ended up in Algeria. And I've always been absolutely positive that grandma's family came from there. And I love the studying of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's. I would encourage you to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
what retirement is for. You get to learn
You
all
have
the things you never had time to do before.
plenty of time. Okay, all right. So let me sing to you another song, which is actually quite popular song. It's called Adio Querida. And maybe some of you already know the song. And it's about, it's a love song that is sang actually by a boy, not a girl. And he was disillusioned from his girlfriend. And he said to her, Adio, farewell, my love. I don't want to see you anymore. I don't want to see your mother anymore because she's responsible for bringing you into this world. And go and find you a different love. Now, this song became very popular from two reasons. First of all, it's a beautiful melody, which we all, it's easy to relate to. But also, it's some people think that Giuseppe Verdi, which is the famous Italian composer, actually borrowed this melody through this cultural exchange from the Jews who lived in the Italian ghetto. and he incorporated the melody, part of the melody in his La Traviata, which is a very famous opera in one of, I think, aria number 13, something. So here's the song. Tu madre cuánto te parió y te quitaron, no, corazón ella no te dio, para amar es seguro, corazón ella no te dio, para amar es seguro. Adiós, adiós querida, no quiero la vida, en la maldad es tú. Adiós, adiós querida, no quiero la vida, en la maldad es tú. Busca otro amor, ajarba otras puertas, espera otro alrededor, que para mí sos muerta. Espera otro alrededor, que para mí sos muerta. Adiós, adiós, querida, no quiero la vida, en la amarga de tú. Adiós, adiós, querida, no quiero la vida, el amargate es tú, me la amarga es tú. Okay.
Thank you so much. Rivka, remind me how we say thank you in Ladino.
Gracias.
Oh, I knew that one. Okay, gracias. I want to thank everyone for being with us. You will receive I'm not sure if you're going to get the video after this week or if you'll get all the videos at the end, but we'll also make sure to get you the handouts that were the slides that were presented. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat before you leave or respond to the email, and we'll see you next week. Next Wednesday evening, which is begins 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. if you're on the West Coast. Anywhere you are, we hope you'll be with us. And one more